Everyone. We are talking with certified elder law attorney Amelia Crotwell to talk a little bit about our COVID-19 toolbox and what kinds of things we need in it. We've heard a lot about the things we need, like hand sanitizer and masks and groceries and medicines. But what about our legal documents, and what type of documents do we need? What will they do for us, and how do we get them? Comprehensive planning. Why is it important to do comprehensive planning right now with a qualified attorney, given the pandemic we're in?
Thanks, Megan, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'm glad to be here. As you can see, I'm working from home, and like many of us are, and the COVID pandemic has really changed the way our office works, and I know it's changed the very lives of all of us. So your question is really timely. What does comprehensive planning look like, and what will it do for us? Comprehensive planning is more, first of all, it's more than just documents, right? It's not about paper, a stack of paper. It's about having an understanding of what the risks are that you're facing, and then putting together a plan for how you're going to address those risks and maybe minimize those risks. And so there are two sets of risks that I typically talk with my clients about. The first set of risks would be the risks of what happens if you become incapacitated by illness, accident, or something else. And COVID-19 is a great example of the kind of illness that can be very incapacitating. What happens in those instances to what's going on with your business life or your medical life. And so that's one set of risks that we want to plan for. And then the other set of risks we want to plan for is what happens if you're one of those unlucky people that we see accounted for every day on the news that succumb to COVID-19 and die. What happens in those instances? What are the risks there to your loved ones that you might leave behind? And how can we address those things? So a comprehensive plan addresses both incapacity planning during your lifetime and what happens with your assets and your debts and other obligations at your death. And so we come at that from the perspective that it's not just a document that is provided to the client, but how do you select the right person to assist with those things, right? Who should be your fiduciary? And the fiduciary is that trustworthy person that you would name in your document that would carry out your intentions and your plans for the benefit of others in your life or the benefit of you. So a comprehensive estate plan starts with a great plan. And then it's also going to include documents based on that plan that are, the black and white terms that you set forth for people to follow. Those are your instructions. Think of it as your instruction manual for helping you. And so these are particularly helpful at a time like this because there are a lot of situations where people are incapacitated and they can't act for a certain period of time. If you are on a respirator, you're not texting on your phone while you're on a respirator. I've seen people on respirators before, and they are under a type of anesthesia. They are under sedation. They are not awake. They are not talking. They are not eating. They are literally like in a sort of like an induced coma because that's such a difficult thing for your body to undergo. So during those times, who's paying your mortgage, who's paying your car payment, who's making healthcare decisions for you. These kinds of documents can allow another person to act for you under those circumstances, and they're routinely used and they're commonly used in business and in banking and other areas of life. And so you need them. But one of the important things is you need ones that work. You need ones that are effective. You can't just sit down and write out on a piece of paper, I want Mary Smith to help me with my finances and sign it. That's not going to cut it. So they need to be well drafted and cover lots of different things that your fiduciary, your power of attorney or attorney in fact, is going to encounter, whether it might be a retirement account that you're working with or an employer or a bank or a landlord. There's so many different things out there, and so it needs to be drafted in a way that makes it effective when someone goes to rely on it.
We talk a lot about planning for the unknown, and this pandemic is certainly unknown, and the course it will take on an individual is very unknown. And so, having that plan in place, those contingency plans and the backups are very important. And something I didn't know, being a young mother of two children before I started working at the firm, was how important it was for even me to have my documents in place and my plan in place for my children and what would happen for them. So can you talk a little bit about who should be doing this type of planning, who needs a good solid plan, and how do we consider the different factors?
Sure. That's really an easy question, Megan. You kind of threw me a softball with that one because if you're over the age of 18 and you're not under a conservatorship because you have a disability of some kind, you need this planning. It's that easy.
Absolutely.
Because when you become 18 in the state of Tennessee, you're an adult. And so you're an emancipated adult, and no one has authority to make decisions for you, to sign your name to documents, to handle financial matters for you. So if you're 18 or older, you need to have this kind of planning in place. You need to have fiduciaries named that can serve on your behalf to pursue your best interests, to represent your best interests in all kinds of transactions and relationships, whether they're financial or medical or otherwise. And, if you have young kids, super important for you to have guardianship provisions set forth, because if something happens to you, who's going to take care of those wonderful children, right? And you don't want it to be just anyone, and you don't want it to be who the court chooses. You want it to be who you choose, because there's nothing more personal than deciding who is going to raise that child, that person that you brought into this world, that you have such wonderful hopes for and that you love so much. And that is such a personal decision. You don't want to leave that to chance. So you can't be too young, I guess is my point, Megan. You can't be too young to have this kind of planning. And likewise, you can't be too old, right? You can't be too old to need powers of attorney or need this kind of planning, because life's going to catch up with all of us at some point, right? And we have to be realistic about it. All of us are susceptible to illness. All of us are susceptible to incapacity. No one is going to has the absolute assurance of escaping that. And so we have to be realistic about it. And being realistic means being prepared. And why not?
Yeah, I think now is not the time to be an avoidant coper, and sometimes that can be my default of, well, I don't know who I would pick, and now's the time to start thinking those things through if we haven't already, of who's your A, B, and C, so that we can build in those contingencies